Raiders Zone Weekly with Steve Kandray, Vince Calautti, Billy Hassinger, and Jesse Meade.
Intro says it all. This is Raiders Zone Weekly. I'm Jesse Meade, joined, of course, by Billy Hassinger, Vince Calautti, and Steve Kandray. Steve back in action after missing a weekend, celebrating his birthday in Columbus. Hope it was a good time. Hope it was worth missing the excitement that was the Mount Union-Wilmington game.
No, it wasn't, actually.
I could tell. It was a great weekend for our, crazy weekend in OAC football, to say the least. Lots of upsets. It'll be interesting to see how Ohio Northern rebounds. You guys will be taking care of that this Saturday, as the Polar Bears looking to avenge a loss to Muskingum, a very unexpected loss. But that's not what we're going to talk about right now. Our first subject of the evening is MLB playoffs. They are now underway. We saw two awesome collapses to start the playoffs off. Is this how you envision things going here for the MLB?
Hey, it's just crazy. Boston had a 9-game lead over Tampa Bay for the wild card on September 2nd. They just absolutely collapsed. And going into last weekend, I never would have thought that Tampa Bay would be able to pull it off, especially with Boston playing Baltimore and Tampa Bay going up against the Yankees. But Tampa Bay did put out their ace, David Price, yesterday. But although he did get hammered for 7 runs, but it was just completely insane. And Evan Longoria is definitely one of the big reasons why they are in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, this actually got me pretty excited about baseball, which is kind of a rarity for me. Last time I was this excited was when the Pirates and the Indians were respectively leading their leagues in baseball.
Oh, the Pirates.
Yeah, the Pirates when they were up there. That was tough. But I was actually really excited about this because, we're actually seeing teams that aren't going to be in the World Series this year. I mean, Tampa Bay instead of the Red Sox. But, as far as the Red Sox go, it's not like a team that should have been in the playoffs. If you can't beat Baltimore at the end of the season, then you really don't deserve to be in the postseason. Not to mention the fact that they've had the worst winning percentage in the month of September that they've ever had since, 1962. So, I mean, it's not one of those collapses where, they just had a fluky game and the team should have really been in the postseason. No, not with the Red Sox. It was a complete collapse. So I'm pretty excited about the way things turned out.
It's the largest collapse in MLB history in a single month. Followed closely by the Atlanta Braves 8.5 game. That's the one nobody's talking about because you had the Boston Red Sox, big market team, and the Braves collapsing terribly. Billy and I were talking about it last night. He said that wouldn't have happened if Bobby Cox had been there. Cox would have gotten himself thrown out to revitalize his team and get things going.
It's worked so many times.
I mean, it's just crazy to think two teams that were leading the wild card both lost extra innings in one game. The other one losing in the bottom of the ninth. And I think really, though, if you look at the Tampa Bay Yankees game, what I really got out of it was when the Yankees have everybody on there, they're a scary team.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to be a great series between them and Detroit. I really think Detroit should just pitch Verlander every game just so that way they can get into the championship game.
The great thing about the Red Sox collapse is that, this is vintage Boston baseball, baby. Falling apart right when it looked like they were about to overcome some sort of adversity. I love it. It was great. I'm finally glad that the Boston fan base can finally get a little bit of a slap to the face because sports have been very, very good to the Boston area.
Read Bill Simmons' running diary of it. Amazing. He's a great writer, and it's a really funny take on what happens.
Always love Bill Simmons. Moving on to something a little bit less depressing. That is the potential of one Andrew Luck. As Billy and I were digging through our brains, trying to figure out something that we could talk about, inevitably led to me bemoaning the fact that the Vikings can't draft him. But the question is, what is the potential here on Andrew Luck? A lot of people have been saying, he could be as good as Peyton Manning. Is that true, or could he be as good as Andrew Luck? Or could we have another Ryan Leaf here as far as things go for the quarterback from Stanford?
I really don't think anybody could be as good as Peyton Manning in this point in history of the NFL. I mean, that's kind of like saying, this guy could be as good as Michael Jordan. I mean, right now, Peyton Manning is pretty much the greatest quarterback we've ever seen. I mean, arguably, there's some people who would sort of, maybe say Brady in big games. But regardless, I think he has a lot of potential. I think it's really way too early to say, he's going to be a great, great quarterback in the NFL. The one thing I do like about him that he has that intangible, just sort of polished look. He's got that quick release, which really says a lot more about a guy than either passing numbers or touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Because, you can have a guy playing for a good team in college and he can succeed at the college level, but it's no guarantee that he's going to be good in the pros. But Andrew Luck just has that look and that feel that makes him look like a good pro quarterback. So I'm pretty excited. I think he could be a good pro, but I think saying that he could be one of the best ever is way too early at this point.
Yeah, I agree. It's too early, but you also look at some of the things he's done. He's not just a great quarterback. He's a great football player. Did you see him truck the defensive player last year when he had the ball? Yeah. He just laid him out. I mean, that's just – and there's a quarterback that's not afraid to get hit right there, which is nice. The other thing that I really think stands out for his potential in the NFL is this. John Elway, who was a Stanford Cardinal, has all the records there basically. His records are under siege by Andrew Luck. And that's impressive because, as we all know, John Elway was a pretty good quarterback.
And one thing that people don't really notice about Andrew Luck is his ability to run the ball. He runs a 4.6 40, and it doesn't look like he's moving that fast, but he is quite the runner. But even though he isn't the fastest guy, he's still pretty good at running the ball, so he's able to get out of the pocket and get out of tight situations. But just the mechanics that he has at throwing the ball are really some of the best mechanics that some pro scouts are talking about that they've seen since Peyton Manning about 13, 14 years ago.
Yeah, it's so hard to try to guess at what these guys are going to do and where they're going to end up because, one person could easily become a legend as easily as another person could become a bust. Coming out of college, I don't think anyone said Tom Brady is going to be, the next coming of Joe Montana. No one could have ever predicted that. But at the same time, there's some guys like you look there, you are a quarterback. You are just simply a great quarterback. And that's exactly what Andrew Luck is at this moment.
There is some hope for you for getting Andrew Luck. If they lose to the Kansas City Chiefs, they will be 0-4 and well on their way to possibly tanking the season.
No, baby. I already told you, man. Christian Ponder will be the greatest quarterback that's ever laced up a pair of cleats. You just wait and see. He's going to lead my glorious, soon-to-be Los Angeles Vikings to the promised land. Let's see if we can cue up a little bit of a sound effect here. As I'm a little bit behind. There it is.
Undivided.
First subject to talk about for 5 minutes, guys. It's fantasy time, and let's think about this. Let's just envision this in our minds and think about what it would mean for the NFL and pro sports if we could have a Buffalo and Detroit Super Bowl. Would it be the greatest thing ever, or would nobody watch this game at all?
You know what? People would watch this. And you know why they would watch this? For one single player, Ndamukong Suh. They want to see if he can go insane and stop Ryan Fitzpatrick's aerial assault against his Detroit Lions defense. And you saw in the Texas, the Big 12 championship game, Nebraska and Texas, how he went off and basically single-handedly kept that Nebraska team in that game and almost destroyed the hopes of Colt McCoy getting to a championship. But you look at that, he would be in there, he would draw marquee people, and I think really this team, this city, both cities would be so invigorated by getting to the Super Bowl, they would just buy out stuff. And then they wouldn't really have to worry about low ratings because they would be sold out totally.
I think it's an interesting scenario to look at. I think that pretty much everyone watches the Super Bowl regardless of if they care about the teams in it or not, just because of the nature of the spectacle of the event. But I also think that these fan bases for these teams probably aren't as big as the teams that have been doing well. Well, I mean, as long as the Steelers have been doing well over like the last decade, they've probably grown their fan base. Same thing with the Colts, same thing with the Packers. I mean, so it's kind of a toss-up. I think everyone would watch the game, but I also think that maybe less. I don't know. It's just hard to tell. Also, I need a quick shout-out to Laurel Wilder listening from Allegheny College.
There it is.
As my Twitter campaign.
There you go. Yeah, in case
Laurel, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, in case you weren't aware, Steve is not giving free shout-outs to anyone that tweets him on air. Continue, Billy.
The thing about this Super Bowl matchup would be is I was showing Jesse this article from Tuesday Morning Quarterback that I saw yesterday, and they were talking about it. If this game were to go like both these teams have been playing this year, the game would be 0-0 at halftime, and then end 93-92 in overtime with Buffalo winning. Because you look at it, both of these teams have had slow starts in every game. Of course, Buffalo was down 21-0 to New England. And Detroit was down big time to the Vikings.
Some team. Yeah.
Yeah, your beloved Vikings. But they were able to fight back in the second half and just have played phenomenal. Buffalo was playing great ball. They have a good running game with Jackson and Spiller. The receivers are playing good. And that defense is looking very good with Sean Merriman on it.
I think the one problem that this game would run into is that, like, when you had, let's take the Super Bowl between the Giants and the Patriots. You had one clearly defined underdog, and you had the superpower giant. People love that story. So when the Giants won, it was like all of America screamed in unison, "Ha ha, take that, New England." In this game, you have two underdogs. I don't know if that would really work out. At this point, both teams have been so bad for so long that both of them coming out at the same time actually might give the reverse effect that we're looking for here.
No, this is the feel-good story here. You're happy whoever wins. It doesn't matter. You're just going to be happy because it's like, oh, they made it to the Super Bowl. That's awesome. So it's kind of like with the Arizona Cardinals. You didn't really feel too terrible that they lost to the Steelers because they made it, finally, after so many years of stinking it up. I think it's the same effect for both teams.
I'll bet if you look statistically, this would have a lower TV rating than any other Super Bowl, but I'll bet they would be most attended. Because can you imagine the passion? I mean, Detroit has been clearly the worst team in the NFL for at least the last 10 to 15 years. Buffalo right down there with them, but just the combined passion of these fans together, I imagine that everybody would go to the Super Bowl since they've, haven't been to one. Also, quick shout out to Chris Cerluco listening from Allegheny College.
Oh man, this is going to get out of hand. I can feel it now. Think about it though. You not only would you have two teams that have traditionally been terrible, you're having a no-name, and now he's got a name, but a no-name quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick, a quarterback who is known for nothing but being injured and not fulfilling his potential, and you have these two teams that are kind of just coming together after decades of being terrible. I just don't know how I would even handle such a game to watch it. I guess I would root for the Lions, but then again, the Bills, they've lost so many times in the Super Bowl that you want to toss one to them. The Lions have not even made a Super Bowl.
And that's what I was just going to say. The Bills went 4 straight times in the 90s. They lost all 4 times. Of course, the infamous wide right call against the Giants. And then you got Detroit, who's never been there, and they haven't had a playoff appearance since I can't even remember the last time they made the playoffs. But you look at it, though, either way, whoever would win that game, if it were to become the true Super Bowl, there'll be a party in either Buffalo or Detroit if that happens.
There'll be riots in both cities regardless of what the outcome is, especially in Detroit. New development about our favorite subject that we love to talk about each and every week. I know I love bringing it up every week. That's the BCS. New development says that the committee might actually reconsider their 2-team per conference limit in BCS bowl games, meaning we could just be seeing BCS bowl games of nothing but SEC teams playing each other. I think that'd be great.
I think that you should put the best teams in the bowl games, but I also think that bowl games are kind of a joke, so this is sort of a weird situation right now. I mean, who cares? It's like you win the Orange Bowl. It's like, okay, you won, but what did you really win? You won a big game. It's not the championship. You didn't actually win anything of importance. You played a good team. It's just bizarre, so it's kind of weird for me to even analyze this. But I mean, I think it's kind of good that they're reconsidering that just because it's not fair, and it sort of makes it seem like it's less about the money. Mm-hmm. If it's only 2 teams per conference, then it's like, well, we need to have some sort of parity. But if you take off that limit, then it's like, okay, we actually want the best teams playing. So I think it's actually a good consideration.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I remember a couple years ago, I think Ohio State and Michigan got in there for the Big Ten, but Wisconsin was left out, and Wisconsin easily deserved to be in a BCS game just as much as Ohio State and Michigan did, but they just left them out because of that rule. And then whoever it was that took Wisconsin's place in the BCS game, they just got absolutely thumped by whoever they played. I can't remember who it was. So it's like, I think what they're trying to do is get the best teams in there, like Steve said, so you have better competition. Because we've seen recently, there have been some bowl games going back to 2007 when Georgia played Hawaii. Of course, Hawaii shouldn't have been there in the first place. Georgia just thumped them. But then recently, like UConn last year just got thumped by Oklahoma. Stanford really took it to Virginia Tech. So you got these teams that are getting in there by way of the OMAC berth, but they don't play the way that they should be playing for a conference champion.
You know what I think this is? I think all the BCS presidents got together and said, hey, who wants to keep Boise State out? Everyone raised their hands. I really think this is what it's coming down to. They want to.
So it's a conspiracy.
I think so. Really, I'm going to be the negative. I'm going to be the negative guy here. That the fact that Boise State is getting so much attention, there's so much controversy going on. Hey, we need a playoff. They're going to go, you know what? We're going to give those other teams that are already in our conference. Yeah, we're going to make you jump to our big conferences. If you want to get in, you're going to have to play really well in a big BCS conference, and you're going to have to jump up. That's what TCU is doing with the Big East, and I think that's what it is. I think this is more politics than anything else, because they're going to make more money that way, and they're going to keep guys like Boise State out when they don't have to worry as much about that, and they're the big driving force for the playoff stuff.
Yeah, we'll see. In a fantasy world, this would actually be a terrible decision, and it's so bad of a decision that the system collapses on itself, and once the smoke and rubble clears, we're left with the playoff with the way it was always meant to be. I agree with you, Steve. The bowl system is just absurd to me to think about. You have all these teams, a bunch of 5-5 teams playing each other, in a game that has no consequence to anyone anywhere. And the only reason you're doing it is because, hey, a lot of people are making money off of it. I don't know. It seems not useful at all. Let's think about this, though, in Division I football. When you have to sit down and ponder this question, think deeply, because we're going to ask you, who's the real number one in Division I? Is it LSU or is it Oklahoma?
I'm going to go with my argument that the SEC is the superior conference in college football right now and just go with LSU. Plus, the Big 12 is sort of collapsing on itself. I'm just really not convinced yet about Oklahoma. They didn't tweet me.
Gee, just take over the mic, why don't you? But nonetheless, I think it's LSU because you look at what they've done. They've gone on the road 3 weeks to start out the season. They played top teams. They beat West Virginia. They took it to Oregon and Dallas. And for some reason, I'm blanking on who they played in the second week, but it was the top-ranked team. And they took it to them, too. Oklahoma, yeah, they went on the road and beat Florida State down in Tallahassee. But Oklahoma, though, I still think has some holes in it. And if you put up LSU's defense against that offense, it's going to be a LSU victory.
I really think Oklahoma is the number one. They were put number one at the beginning, and they have not shown any signs that they should not be number one after that. I don't think you change things midway through the year. You don't do that in Division III just because Mount Union does really well, and Whitewater only wins by 23-20 does not mean that we automatically flip-flop places. I think that it is I think if you were put number one to begin with, you should stay at number one. So I think Oklahoma's the number one until they lose or until they meet up in the championship and LSU beats them.
I'm going to sound like such a traitor saying this, but I really believe in the strength of conference now because, I mean, look back when Ohio State was ranked number one and went to the national championship and lost to Florida, then lost to LSU. I think it's the same thing here. I think if we put both these teams on the football field against each other, it'd be a blowout and LSU would win like 45-27.
You know, I just... You know, I've seen them win a couple of big games this year. I've always picked against them. I still refuse to believe in Oklahoma. You know, I would say the same thing as an outsider if I were not an Ohio State fan. I would still say the same thing about Ohio State. I would refuse to believe in Ohio State. I refuse to believe in Oklahoma until they are there holding the championship trophy. I will refuse to believe in the Sooners, and I really LSU is a great team. Whenever they get an offense to go with the defense that they have every year, they're a great football team.
I think something else that the voters are looking at this year is the strength of schedule. Like I said, they played 3 top-ranked teams, West Virginia and Oregon, especially being number 3 at the time. They played well against them, and then Oregon's really come back with a vengeance since that loss.
You got to also remember, do you think LSU goes all the way? Because I don't. I think they lose to Alabama.
Oh yeah, there's always some crazy upset that's going to happen. It just depends on who it's going to happen to. Speaking of crazy upsets, our cheers of the week going to Buffalo. I always like it when we can mention the Bills twice in one episode because they deserve the attention right now. If they fall off the face of the earth, whatever. At least we had these glorious 3 weeks. They come all the way back. They beat the Patriots. We get to see Tom Brady throw his helmet in frustration. We get to see the Bills fans go crazy in Buffalo. Truly, I thought it was a great game.
They even made Tom Brady cut his hair. Okay, he cut his hair. Now that's significant. And I really, you got to give credit. I mean, you got to give credit overall. A bunch of these people are cast-offs. Fred Jackson's from College, and he's really stepping it up. Ryan Fitzpatrick from Harvard, he got his 12 game. He's considered just basically a backup, and he's really stepped up and lit it up. Stevie Johnson, Nelson, you've got all these guys who no one really thinks about. And it's not like Bruce Smith, I believe, was talking about. He goes, this is not like the team that I was on with the first-round picks.
Yeah.
This is all cast-off guys. That's what's a different feel for these Bills.
Yeah, about the only first-round picks they got on the team right now are Sean Merriman on defense and C.J. Spiller is the backup running back. But Fitzpatrick, he's not playing like a quarterback from Harvard. He's playing like a quarterback that's from a top-tier school that produces some of the best quarterbacks. And he's just managing the game so well and to lead that second-half comeback. And then you look at Brian Moore. The funny thing I had found was Brian Mormon jumping on top of Ryan Lindell when he made that field goal. I have never seen a punter jump that high in my life.
Yeah, that was kind of ridiculous. It looked like he was going to get stuck on the kicker's shoulder pads there. That was a little ridiculous. But I think anytime you see a team make this big of an upset, it's exciting, especially for Buffalo, who's been at the bottom of the pack so much. I mean, it was really just an impressive win if you look at this team. I mean, after battling back from a deficit, it's not like they had some fluky plays and went out to a jump. Battling back from a New England team who has Tom Brady and the offensive weapons they have. I mean, Tom Brady and Wes Welker have the greatest, quarterback receiving combination in the league right now and almost historically the best. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. So overall, just a great game played by Buffalo and their ragtag team of misfits, as Vince sort of illustrated.
Yeah, can we talk about this for a second? This is exactly why the NFL is awesome. The Bills, after such a long period of futility, can suddenly out of nowhere, with failing on so many high draft picks, not producing good players with those draft picks, just out of nowhere with a group that seems to is kind of just like duct taping together and tossing out on the field, they're now beating everyone.
Well, you got to be. The NFL is basically high-fiving themselves right now. They're going, our parity system is working, baby.
It's uniforms. Uniforms. I'm telling
it's
you.
Also, I think Dan Patrick said the other time, it's like every single year for the last 5 years, we've had like 3 new teams in the playoffs every year. So I think NFL has actually accomplished their goal of parity. And real quick, shout out to everyone listening at my grandparents' house in Canfield. Thank you, family, for listening.
There you go. What a nice family that Steve has. Remember when the Buccaneers came out of nowhere?
Yeah.
That was great. And now they're legitimately talked about. That could be exactly where the Bills are going. And I hope they do, because honestly, if there's any fan base that needs that kind of release, it is the Buffalo fan base. Jeers of the week. What are we making fun of this week, guys? We're making fun of the Kansas City Chiefs. What is there more to say about Kansas City? 0-3. They've scored less than anyone, given up more points than anyone through 3 weeks of NFL play. And I'll tell you, this is definitely not what the Chiefs thought a couple years back when they picked up Matt Castle, thought they were turning the corner. This is definitely a team that is going nowhere and has not a whole lot to show for what they've done in the last couple seasons.
And especially after last season, they finally made it back to the playoffs. They had a good season at 10-6. But they just are not doing good offensively. They are just losing horribly. They've only scored like 26 points this year. They've given up 109 points, I think, on the season. They're the only team in the NFL that has allowed more than 100 points on the season. It's only the 4th week of the season this weekend. There's got to be something done about that defense. They got Romeo Crennel, who historically is a good defensive coordinator, and it's not like they're lacking the talent there. They just aren't producing.
You know what? I mean, somebody has to be the worst in the NFL, and this is kind of ironic because I just gave a shout-out to my family who's listening right now. I'm actually distantly related to Todd Haley, so it's so weird. So I'm kind of a Chiefs fan a little bit in my heart.
Are you sure about that?
I am sure about that.
All
that
right.
I'm a Chiefs fan or that I'm related?
No, that you're a Chiefs fan.
Oh, yeah, just a little bit, somewhere deep in my heart. But, yeah, it's rough. I mean, you could make the argument that this is parity in the NFL, that somebody has to do bad. I mean, they did go 10-6 last year, so you could make the argument, well, maybe they have to do a little bit worse this year. But it is just kind of depressing that they're starting out 0-3 when there was that glimmer of hope for real Chiefs fans last year.
Well, they had Jamal Charles, too, but, losing him for the year doesn't help. But let's be honest, this team did not look good before Jamal Charles was lost for the year.
Okay, they're 9th in rushing yards at 113.3, 31st in passing yards at 130.7. Opponents' passing yards are 21st overall, 260.3, and opponents' rushing yards 28th at 123.0. I mean, they're basically as many yards as they're gaining, they're giving up, and that's not something you need to do. You can do with that. Todd Haley, we've always heard he's a great. We've heard he's a good coach. We've heard he's a bad coach. He has tantrums with the players and stuff. So we'll see what happens to that volatile nature of his. Mm-hmm. And with Matt Castle, you don't know what you're going to get with him. Yeah,
to me, this is the exact same story as Buffalo in reverse. You have a team full of guys who are not really they haven't been named much of anywhere. But instead of having this great feel-good story, it's exactly what you would expect it to be. It's what we expected Buffalo to be, and it's just not working out. When you talking about people in fantasy desperately picking up a cluster in the hopes that someone in this offense will produce something, that doesn't bode well. Guys like Dwayne Bowe aren't coming through. Of course, Castle's not coming through. You've lost your running back, one of the better running backs in the league. Just a huge. This is kind of like the perfect storm of badness right now in KC, and I cannot wait for the Vikings to lose to them this weekend. In conclusion. Where am I at? I'm always off on the 5 minutes tonight. Here we go. I'll get the sound bites. Just give me a minute. Next 5-minute topic of the evening is something that I'm pretty excited to talk about. How far can Baylor go, guys? Team that is traditionally terrible, looking pretty good, got a great quarterback. Question is, how far can he lead them?
Between your delay of the sound effects and my interrupting the show every 3 minutes to give somebody a shout-out, we're really not technically sound tonight.
It's the Twitter.
But I think Baylor,
it's your shout-outs.
I think Baylor is technically sound. Pretty far they put up some really ridiculous numbers on offense. I mean, they're averaging over 50 points a game. They're pretty much like Mount Union or Wisconsin Whitewater in D3 at this point. I mean, it looks like video game numbers. The only problem with them is that TCU was their only real test. I mean, It's kind of, sort of like people looking at Denard Robinson last year for Michigan. They were like, look at how good this kid is. He's the most exciting player in football. But then once they got into the regular Big Ten season, it sort of showed when they actually went up against a lot better opponents. So I think it's sort of the same story with Baylor. They look good right now, but I really don't think they're going to go that far. I think once they play some more good opponents, they'll still be a ranked team, but I don't see them getting any farther than, a top-tier, almost BCS bowl.
I really think Robert Griffin can take them pretty far. I don't see them winning the Big 12 championship or anything, but I see them maybe getting into one of the lower-tier BCS bowls. The thing you have to really look at him, I was listening to the college game day, they were talking about him, and an analyst said the biggest thing about him is when he's got more touchdowns than incompletions, yeah. 13 to 12 or something like that. And then when his touchdown passes are not the short dink and dunk ones. They're deep balls down the field, right into the receiver's hands as they're in stride. And you when you think about Robert Griffin, you're thinking running the ball, getting around, but he's really throwing the ball well. So he's marketing himself as a great potential pro. And I think he can carry this team pretty far.
I think the thing that's going to hurt Baylor is their defense, because in the Big 12, you got the teams that have high-powered offenses, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State. They're just phenomenal offenses with deep threats. But offensively, I think that they're going to be great in the Big 12, because you look at the Big 12 historically, they're known for putting out some great players, one on almost every team, but they aren't known for their great defensive play overall. I mean, I cannot remember the last time we saw a Big 12 defense really step it up again in a game against a big-time opponent. So offensively, with Robert Griffin playing the way he is, like a man possessed, I think that he is going to have a phenomenal season and could possibly be a Heisman finalist at the end of the year.
Yeah, well, if there's one thing that we know about Heisman voters is that if a quarterback can run and throw the ball, they're all over it. They will be there in an instant. And so far, he's been playing picture-perfect football. The question is, let's say down the line, this Baylor team knocks off say Oklahoma and Nebraska, are they suddenly an instant? Do they have to be number one if they do that?
No, because Oklahoma isn't the number one team in the country. We've established that early, Jesse.
Pay attention. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I think if they put up the kind of numbers they keep putting up and they dominate one of these teams, I think they need to go to one or two because they've proven themselves. But right now they're just not at that stage. I mean, they're playing like mid-level Sun Belt Conference USA type teams. I'm really not that impressed yet. So when you guys jump off the bandwagon for Baylor, be careful that you don't hurt yourselves. I wanted to say that all year.
There you go. No one has ever uttered that phrase ever.
After you guys bashed on me last week when I was here, not able to defend myself.
I don't see them as being able to handle that pressure of beating one of those big types of teams just yet. If they can keep developing a sort of consistency, I can see them doing it, but I don't think it happens this year.
The big thing is just going to be the defense. Are they going to be able to play with the likes of Landry Jones and Ryan Broyles at Oklahoma, and then Brandon Whedon and Justin Blackmon at Oklahoma State?
Tell you what, everyone aboard the Baylor Hype Train Express right now, because this is the last time you'll ever see this express, and this is the last time you'll ever hear that phrase. But I love it. Again, I love teams that are traditionally terrible and come out of nowhere and play great football. That's why I love the Muskingum story in D3. It catches you off guard, and it gives you these great stories about these guys that have been around for a while. They've suffered through a lot, and suddenly it's finally paying off for them. I hope it pays off for Baylor in the long run here.
Oh, are we still on topic here?
Oh, wow.
Everyone on this side of the table got a little confused. We thought you were just delaying for your sound effect again.
Wow. Wow, thank you.
But, the only problem is...
Glad you have faith in me.
When we were talking about Baylor getting ranked high, we know that the BCS voters aren't going to do that. It's like Boise State. They can beat anybody they want. Doesn't mean they're going to go to the top.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can we move on? Did you hear the sound effect? I can play it again. Yeah. There's
I miss 1 week, and then it's like 3 hosts against Steve.
Hey, I'm just saying.
There's only one host.
Oh, yeah,
only one, and his name is Jesse Meade. He's the man sitting behind the board with the button.
The one who's making me drive 3 hours on Saturday.
Yep.
Yeah, you're the host for now.
Yeah. Let's talk about something that is a kind of an interesting development, something that I wasn't aware that was possible, but turns out happens fairly frequently in sports. You can trade players for coaches and managers, and it just actually happened in the MLB. Ozzie Guillen has been traded to the Marlins for a couple of prospects.
Which is funny, though, because they said that he was released on ESPN. They traded. I remember getting that text. I was like, well, ESPN messed that up. And then finding out that legitimately happened. They did that with Callahan, I think, didn't they? Is that what you were saying with Callahan from the Raiders?
No, what it was is John Gruden was traded from Oakland to Tampa Bay. And I knew that I saw that in a media guide for the Buccaneers a couple of years ago when I was at the Hall of Fame. And I even spent like a half hour trying to find it the other day on the internet and show Jesse that. And he's just like, well, daggone, it's actually they traded like 2 first-round picks for him.
It's quite an interesting thing, but I think this is actually a good move for the Marlins. This will keep them in the news as Ozzie will rant profane things about how his team is terrible and they really need to step up, and then midway through when there's nobody there again, he'll rant about the fans. So they'll be in the news a lot, maybe catch some attention. They're getting a new stadium, which will coincide nicely, and then after 5 years they'll let Ozzie go for another manager who's not as crazy.
All right, so you guys know I don't follow baseball that closely, so I'm going to put my superficial spin on this story here. All right, baseball is the only sport where the managers and coaches dress like the players. I think this was really just a big communication, and they thought he was a player.
I could see it.
In fact, they didn't think they were trading for another coach. They thought it was a player because they're all dressed the same.
Brilliant.
Also, in other sports, can you imagine this happening? Like if they were like the Jets are like, let's trade Rex Ryan for Peyton Manning. Let's
Like I
get another
said,
good quarterback.
like I said,
It'd be crazy.
It happened. That's how the Bucs got John Gruden.
And then the first year they got him, they win the Super Bowl. But,
So there you go.
Wow. Weird.
Only Al Davis.
There you go.
I think that this is kind of perfect right now for the Florida Marlins because they get
Miami Marlins, sir.
The Miami
Have you not
Marlins,
seen the
excuse me.
beautiful rainbow logo that they now
And I
have?
was just about to say that they got the one most colorful managers in MLB history, and now they have a very colorful
Man,
logo.
I tell you, I can't wait to see
that is
the
a perfect-
uniforms on that.
I'm waiting. I cannot wait to see Ozzie Guillen wearing that uniform come opening day. It's just going to be completely ridiculous.
Did they decide to take the Devil Rays mantra of having a rainbow with a
Somebody in the
fish
MLB's got to
creature?
have it. I tell you what, somebody's got to have it. I'm glad the Rays are working it for the MLB. Yeah, so Ozzie Guillen, does he bring the Marlins any respectability? I don't know. I mean, the Marlins have kind of been on this weird system for the last decade or so where they are really, really bad for long stretches of time, like 4 or 5 years at a time. And then they have one season. They get all the way to the World Series and they win it. And then they go back into the tank instantly the next season. I don't know if Ozzie Guillen will rectify that. I don't know if he can make baseball relevant in Miami because really, whenever you see the stands at a Marlins game, it's pretty bad.
It is. I mean, you look at it, their football field is just absolutely, completely ridiculous. And there's no one in the stands. So if you're out in left field, you could go like 5 sections over and get a home run ball yet.
They're going to lose more fans with this logo. I'm telling you, they're lose. I just
Steven
looked it
Vincent
up.
just discovered the Miami Marlins logo.
It's awful. I'm just stating it out there. They're going to lose even more fans. They're going to want to go to the beach and try and drown themselves after seeing.
Yeah,
this.
Maybe they can trade for a new logo.
I'll tell you what. If you've not seen the Miami Marlins logo, I would suggest you head to the Googles right now. What can I say? They've ditched their colors are now basically like a red, a very light blue, and a yellow. It's going to be interesting.
They try to make like the image of a mountain and a fish diving over it or something in rainbow colors. It's weird.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, it's weird.
Maybe they can trade for LeBron James and Chris Bosh.
That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I tell
right
you
there.
what. I tell you what, that might work. Send Ozzie. Can you imagine Ozzie coaching some basketball? That'd be pretty cool.
That would be awesome.
There would be so many bleeps in a post-game conference that it would be a record.
Certainly have a lot more personality than
He
Eric
would get a
Spoelstra.
technical foul during the post-game rants.
It'd be great. I tell you what, Bobby Knight throws a chair. I can't imagine what Ozzie Guillen would be doing on a basketball court. We're off topic, but that's okay. I like it. We're moving on to Michael Vick. What can you say? He got injured again, but this time ranting about officials. A lot of hits were laid on him. Were they dirty hits? Were they allowing Mike Vick to take shots that he should not have been? Any thoughts on this?
I think the only reason, I'm going to have to give credit to a lot of the sports talk shows I listen to because this point has been made over and over. The only reason he's getting injured so much is because, number one, he's a smaller quarterback. He's only about 6 foot tall compared to a lot of other ones. And number two, he's not very well protected. That Philadelphia offense is not designed to create a pocket and protect his quarterback. Instead of getting a good offensive line, they pretty much just traded for guys like Michael Vick, and they got a lot of good receivers. And they really just expected Michael Vick to be able to elude the tacklers and get out of the tackle box and roll out to either side and make big plays. They really weren't expecting to try and protect him inside the pocket. And though he's become like so much of a pocket passer, it's really resulting in him getting hit more. So I think that's the only reason he's getting hurt. So I don't think you can really rant about the officials. Another point that I heard made multiple times this week was that Ben Roethlisberger gets hit just as much as he does, and he's that same sort of mobile quarterback. So
Yeah.
I think it's just the style of play and the fact that he's a smaller guy.
You got to also look at the fact that this is not just him talking about these hits and everything. We listened on First Take this morning, Jay Cutler ranting about being hit as well. So a lot of people and all these guys are former defensive linemen and are saying, get over it. Basically, you're a quarterback. No one cares. And basically, that's really what it feels like. No one cares. We've protected you so many different times. I think a lot of people are just kind of sick of hearing it, especially because Vic often will try to make plays on his own. That's where he gets injured. So I think that is I think that's something to consider as well. That he's not just in the pocket getting hurt. When he's running and stuff, he's also has a greater potential to hurt himself. So a lot of people, I think, are just saying, get over it and move on.
And, something that they also pointed out today on First Take was you saw Phil Jackson before in the NBA kind of complaining about how Dwayne Wade travels so much during his spin moves that he does. And then they start calling it, and when Tom Brady came back from his torn ACL, he would barely get nudged, and he would signal for the flag, say he got hit in the knee, and the referees were calling it. So I think what we're going to see this week, the next couple weeks, is Michael Vick's going to take a shot, Jay Cutler's going to take a shot, and we're going to see so many personal fouls and possible fines coming out of this. It's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the NFL handles this because, of course, the NFL does not have a uniform policy for really anything. It's kind of how Roger Goodell feels on a week-to-week basis. Guess what time it is?
It's hockey time.
Yeah, it's hockey time on Raiders Zone Weekly, the best time of the week. And actually, speaking of uniform policies, this actually turns out to be a good segue by me. That was not intentional at all. The NHL has instituted a new rule. All suspensions will be accompanied by the film of the incident, video of the incident that led to the suspension, with commentary by the head disciplinary, Brendan Shanahan, on why that move warranted a suspension. Is this a good move by the NHL?
I love this idea, personally. I am a big fan of this idea because it's actually legitimately, instead of being, like you say, Goodell, looking at things, it's going, here, this is what you did, this is wrong, here you go. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I think it's more revolutionary than anything else.
So wait a minute, are they taking NHL players and sitting them down and saying, watch this is what you did wrong?
Basically what the NHL is doing is releasing this film publicly, with Shanahan commentating, slowing down, replaying the incident over and over again, and highlighting what was illegal about it and why it warranted a suspension.
So is it trying to improve consistency among the referees?
It's trying to show that the NHL is being impartial and that they're not just handing out suspensions just for the sake of suspensions, as they've been accused of that seasons in the past.
Oh, I see. Thank you for explaining that. For some reason in my head, I just had this sort of picture of them saying, all right, along with the fine, you have to sit in this room, you have to watch what you did, and we're going to explain to you why it was wrong. And I was really confused. I thought they were trying to shame players. And real quick, shout out to Caroline, who's running a paper here at the University of Mount Union.
Look at that. You were on a roll tonight.
Just so many shout-outs tonight from Steve, but I think that this is a good thing too, just because you got the players that will say that what they did didn't deserve to be suspended for, but then with Shanahan actually sitting down and explaining it bit by bit, it's going to show why they got suspended and that it really was warranted. One, because you got some players in the NFL we saw last year, so many times James Harrison got fined for late hits on quarterbacks, and a couple of them, I will say, he did not deserve one, like the shot he had on Breeze and the one on Fitzpatrick. They shouldn't have been personal fouls or warranted a fine, but there were times where he would drop his head, and you got a bunch of Steeler fans like Steve here saying that he shouldn't have had one, but when you leave with the spirit of your helmet like that, you're going to get
the receiver ducked into the hit. He bent down, and Harrison wasn't leaning his head, he was just making a tackle.
It's automatically, he's defenses at that point, that's why he was suspended.
It's the catch-all. If anything goes wrong in the league, the good stand by it. You can always find Harrison. You can always find him. And, if you need to make anything better, that's a fine for Harrison.
I'm sort of imagining, though, there's still going to be sort of some dissent with the NHL, because people are going to look at this and say, well, what about that play that wasn't picked? What about that play where he wasn't fined or something like that? So it's never going to be a perfect system, but I guess shout out to the NHL for trying to improve awareness.
Well, it's already happened. Wazinski for the Blue Jackets is suspended for the first 8 games of the year, and there's already been a huge outcry that even though this video is explaining why it happened, it doesn't account for everything. So you can't please everyone, but really I think it is a good idea. New candidates for the NFL Hall of Fame, guys. A lot of interesting names on the list this year. Head coach Bill Cowher, Bill Parcells, Marty Schottenheimer, Keyshawn Johnson, Tiki Barber, Drew Bledsoe, Stephen Davis, Rod Smith, Will Shields, Troy Vincent, Mike Vanderjagt. Any locks here for first round, our first ballot Hall of Famers?
I'm thinking Parcells, just because he's such an iconic coach.
Yeah.
I think that even if he might not necessarily warrant it more than another guy, he just sort of has that. He's sort of improved upon the game, and his image out there sort of, he's one of those guys where you look at it and you be like, he should be in the Hall of Fame. Same thing with Marty Schottenheimer. I think, a lot of the other these guys, maybe if you compare them to other guys who are they could be in the Hall of Fame. But I think, for first rounders, it sort of goes as, what sort of image did you have? How did you affect and better the game, I guess?
Yeah.
I definitely think Parcells is going to get in there, possibly a first ballot Hall of Famer. He just had a phenomenal coaching career, had some Super Bowls. I think Rod Smith could be almost a dark horse to get in on the first ballot this year, because within the first few years of his career, he was able to get 2 Super Bowls, had that big play in Super Bowl 33, I think it was, when Denver was playing Atlanta, took it down to the 80 yards for a touchdown almost instantly, and just had a real phenomenal, consistent career. Had 1,600 yards one season, ended up with 63 or 68 touchdowns, I believe, in his career. So he had a good career overall. So I think that Parcells and possibly Rod Smith.
I think the only 2 out of this group that are first ballot Hall of Famers are Parcells and Cowher, because those guys are iconic images. You have Marty Schottenheimer in there, but Marty is not Marty is mostly known for losing big games. While he's had a lot of things, he's done a lot of innovation. What do you think of? You think of the drive, the fumble, you think of the choke in Kansas City, San Diego, all those types of things. With Cowher and with Bill Parcells, you think iconic guys who, whichever with the Steelers, stuff like that. As for any of the wide receivers, I mean, Chris Carter hasn't made it yet. I don't think any of these guys are going to make it. Hines Ward, a Hall of Fame, possibly a Hall of Famer, according to Jamison Hensley of the AFC North blog, writes that only 7 players in the top 20 for receiving yards are in the Hall of Fame. Jerry Rice, James Lofton, Steve Largent, Art Monk, Charlie Joyner, Michael Irvin, and Maynard. And that's it. Lofton got it in 2005, so I think wide receivers have a hard climb to get there.
You know, the one thing I'll say on this, if he doesn't get in on the first ballot, he'll get in eventually, and you know I'm excited to see a bust of the jaw of Bill Cowher. That's gonna be an awesome bust. I can't wait to see it. I wonder if they exaggerate it because it needs to be in the Hall of Fame.
It's gonna be like Jay Leno,
the
chin
scowl.
sticking
Do you
out.
think he'll be scowling? Do you think?
He has to be scowling, and someone will poke their eye on the chin.
Yeah, it's kind of like with Parcells. You know, his bust has got to be him screaming at someone. That's the only way this can work.
That could be a very scary bust, seeing Parcells screaming.
Yeah, right. Something that I'm excited to talk about, and I'm glad we get to talk about it for another 5 minutes. There it is.
Undivided.
This is the 5-minute segment where we get to play have another fantasy moment. Me and Billy thought it'd be pretty cool if you could redesign the divisions of the NFL. Teams have to remain in the same conferences, so no shipping the Patriots off to the NFC or anything like that. How would you realign the NFL divisions? Because we've talked about it before, how little sense they seem to make sometimes, especially like when you think like the Cowboys are in the East. It doesn't make any sense. How would you guys redo this for the NFL?
I put a lot of work into this, actually. This is why I was almost late for the show. Real quick, shout out to Bailey listening from Mount Union. So what I did, I sort of made this, I guess I'm going to call it a parody sort of bracket. Not parody like haha, but like parity, like on par. So I took, over the last 10 years, I found out what the standings were in each conference, and I took all the number one teams. I took all the number 1 teams in the AFC divisions and put them in one division, and then I put all the number 2 in second division. So here's how it came out. In the AFC, we got the Colts, Patriots, Steelers, and Broncos all in one division. I guess that'd be like the top one. Then we have the second tier, which is the Jets, Ravens, Titans, and Chargers. Then you got the Dolphins, the Bengals, the Jaguars, and the Chiefs.
Oh, God, this last division's going to be rough.
And then it's the Bills, the Browns, the Texans, and the Raiders all fighting it out for a playoff spot. And then in the NFC, we got Eagles, Packers, Saints, Seahawks for the number 1. Then we have Giants, Vikings, Buccaneers, Rams, Bears, Panthers, Cowboys, 49ers in the next one. And then the last one, Redskins, Lions, Falcons, Cardinals. So I feel like once you got to the Patriots, it would just... I feel like once you got to the playoffs, if we use this system, it would be so uneven because there'd be like the Patriots playing, the best of, it'd be like the Falcons or the Lions or something. But I mean, that kind of is the way it works now in a weird way. But I just thought it was kind of fun to play it out like this.
So there it is.
I guess no one else has any more comments. I guess I just...
Like, I was thinking about this, and there really aren't too many changes I would make. Both of the West, the AFC and NFC West, the Rams and the Chiefs don't make much sense, but there's no other teams that you could really throw out there. The Cowboys I would take out of the NFC East, throw them in the NFC South, and put the Panthers in the NFC East, because the NFC North, that's perfect the way it is. You got Detroit, Chicago, Green Bay, and Minnesota. The AFC North, I would take Baltimore out of there, throw them in the East, move the Colts into the North, and then out of the East, I would take the Dolphins out of there and move them into the South, and then you got pretty nice geological regions. But like I said, you almost got to leave the Rams and the Chiefs in the West just because there's no teams out past them other than the teams that are out there in the West, and the Cowboys are a lot further south. So just geologic-wise, that's the way that makes most sense to me.
Yeah, I kind of went geology, too, with the first geography. Yeah, geology, who has the best rock formations? We're going to put them together. Sorry, geography. I kind of went that same way with the AFC. I was trying to figure out NFC stuff, and I just get so confused with it because I was like, if I had everything,
the NFC's crazy.
The NFC crazier. South would be gigantically huge. You would have Dallas, and it would have and St. Louis in there. You'd only have 3 teams in the East, and in the West, the North would stay the same. It'd be kind of like what they do for the AL and the NL in baseball. But I have a better idea. Here's what you do: every year, you just take numbers 1 through however many in the NFC, and then you draw numbers. What 4 numbers, those teams go together. Whatever 4 numbers, it would just be like a big mix-up every year, or like a game of pick-up sticks. Whichever things you pick up first without knowing what number, those all go together, and it could be like crazy things every year.
Well, another thing I was thinking of is you could take your ending record, sort of how they do the draft, and you could sort it like that. So you have like the best team is in a division, and then you also put the worst team in that division, and then you go the second best team in another division, second worst team in another division, and have like this weird like mix-up of somehow fairness. I'm not really sure if that would be fair or not, but
yeah.
You know what? If we wanted to do it by geology, like Vince said, I think we could pick teams. So we have like the Steelers, who are in a mountainy state, and then we do Oakland, and we put San Francisco in there because they have mountains too. And then we just take a bunch of teams that are like in the flat part of the country and put them
This
together.
is genius.
You'd have to
you're on a roll tonight, man.
You'd have to add South Dakota or something. They would have to get a football team because they have the Black Hills and they have the monuments.
Basically, the Vikings or the South Dakota football team. When you think about it, I strictly just tried to pick out a map, draw giant circles around the teams that are closest, and I tell you what, it leaves you with some really strange and hard divisions because, like most things in America, it's all clustered around the big cities, which are heavily on the coasts, and there's not a whole lot in between going on. This is not, of course, I've not listed all the teams here just because it's so hard to place some of them. But basically, what I came to the conclusion to, I tried not to observe traditional rivalries. I couldn't, if I, couldn't bear to separate like the Ravens or the Steelers or the Browns and the Steelers or something like that. I tried not to observe that because that would have just made it impossible. AFC North, the only two teams that I can come to a conclusion to are the Steelers and maybe the Jets, but I have the Jets still in the East just because it makes more sense there. Raiders, Broncos, Chargers, obviously in the West, that's too easy. South, Miami, Texans, Jaguars, those were the easy ones to stick in there. The AFC East, which I think would be a good conference. Pats, Bills, Jets, and Browns, I think would be a pretty legitimate conference. As far as the NFC goes, the North, exactly the same, except replace the Bears with the Giants. You pretty much get the same result. Black and blue division with a ton of teams that play in crazy snow. The West, Seahawks, 49ers, Saints, Rams. Saints, that kind of sucks for them because they're not really the West, but, like I said, the middle of America makes it weird. South, Falcons, Panthers, Bucks, and Cowboys. And the NFC East, well, it's just whoever's left because the NFC makes no sense at all. We talked about how little sense these divisions seem to make, but in the end, I think this kind of displays just how hard it is, and realistically, to do this.
It really comes down to who has the best rock formations. You have to go with that.
It makes sense.
If you got the hills, and it's
hills and
that's
flatlands. Why Tampa Bay used to be in the Central with the Lions and Bears.
They should just
Vikings
divide
and
into two things: hills or coast and Midwest, and just have teams go at it that way.
This is why we pay Vince the big bucks. Our D3 segment of the week. We're coming up with a name. Don't worry, we'll get one eventually, and we'll have a cool soundbite for it too. But our D3 segment of the week question is: can Muskingum actually be a threat in the OAC? We saw him knock off Ohio Northern. Great offense. The defense played really well against the Polar Bears as well. But can the Muskies actually win on a week-to-week basis moving forward here in the OAC?
Okay, two quick suggestions for names. All right, one of them could be Triple Threat
for
Division 3.
Ooh.
The other one could be 3 for 3, 3 minutes for Division 3
Hey.
football. The other one could be...
Look at this guy.
The other one could be For the Love of the Game, because they don't get paid to play.
Get this guy marketing guru.
My major's marketing. That's what,
there you go.
What I do. That's all I don't know about Muskingum, but I had some ideas for the thing.
Well, I'm glad you contributed to the segment then, in some way, shape, or form.
I think that Muskingum could be a threat, but there's two things that got to happen. One, their quarterback has to stay healthy, unlike what Jake Burns was able to do the last couple years. And two, if their defense keeps playing like they did against Ohio Northern Saturday, it could come down to, as much as we almost hate to say here, it could come down between Mount Union and Muskingum, that last game of the year down in Muskingum, as to who wins the OAC title. And after that win against Ohio Northern, when they were getting no votes at all, they're getting votes now for the D3 top 25. So.
Yeah. It was actually mentioned that Muskingum has not had a winning season since D3football.com has existed. So this is big news for Muskingum, the fact that they're actually even getting votes.
How about this? I'm looking up Muskingum right now. They rank first in Division 3 in sacks per game and second in tackles for loss per game. 10th in rushing defense and scoring defense, and 18th in total. That is ridiculous. It's not just how we said they're just relying on their quarterback only. And I can't seem to find his name. I don't know where it is on here. I'm having a hard time finding his name.
Looking at how the Muskies have kind of put together this run so far, it was kind of after the first 2 weeks, you're kind of like, okay, they're winning. They did this last year. I remember Muskingum coming out of the gates very hot last year. And then I think they ended up losing the final 5 games of the season. And so it's hard to say whether they'll be able to continue doing this. But, for the moment, it's a great story. The defense is playing great football. And so I say kudos. I hope they keep doing it. And you'll learn a lot about them this week because they're playing Wilmington, I'm pretty sure. And so if they take care of business, if they blow out Wilmington, then, then we can start thinking about this team. We'll know whether or not it was a fluke, perhaps, against Ohio Northern.
And it's all about Smith, their quarterback. If he can continue to stay healthy and play as well as he is, they can go far.
Time for not the best segment because that's hockey. That's hockey time, but the second best segment of the week. Raider Zone Mageddon. Each week we talk about what happened in fantasy. Of course, the four of us being in a fantasy league together. I finally got on the board for the first time, avoiding my first ever 0-3 start in any fantasy league I've ever been a part of. As I was a winner, Vince was also a winner over Billy. It was a good week for myself and Vince. I'm just happy that I actually won and that I'm not going to be, that team this year. It feels good. Feels good.
All I can say is thank goodness Billy decided to switch out Drew Brees and not play Wes Welker this week because he would have crushed me. And I'm very angry at Michael Vick for breaking his hand but not really breaking his hand and getting out because on my bench, I had Matt Schaub in there for 24 points. So I don't know if I can trust Vick anymore. He makes me angry.
Yeah, I'll tell you what made me feel good. The fact that I started a running back who didn't even play, and I was still able to defeat. To defeat Steve because Peyton Hills decided to get strep throat.
Oh, really? You beat the guy who didn't come to the draft? Really?
Yeah. Here's that excuse again.
To the draft.
It's all gravy for me. I had my one win. I'm completely content with the season. It's actually this is the best start I've ever had in any fantasy league that I've been in. So I'm really not too upset. But it just goes to show you that my team heavily relies on Tom Brady. His 4 interceptions this week really put me back.
Yeah, that's rough. The -8 points that'll get you every time.
I tell you what I can't believe is Phillip Rivers only getting me 8 points or 6 or 8 points against freaking Kansas City.
All right, can I tell you this story? This is not in Raiders Zone Mageddon, but I was so sad. I won, thankfully. Traded a guy. I was able to get Phillip Rivers because I didn't have a quarterback. Traded a guy, Ahmad Bradshaw, and Gronkowski. That's a ton of points that I gave up to get Phillip Rivers, and he scores me like 7 points. And luckily, here's the best part, played the guy I traded those players to. Luckily, he started neither of them, and I still won anyway.
He usually has much better games than that. I've had him as my keeper on my one league for 2 years, but I mean, it's thank goodness that Mike Wallace decided to go off in the first quarter. I am so glad I have him in all of my leagues.
Yeah, that was something else I couldn't believe. Rashard Mendenhall going up against the Colts, who have a horrible rush defense.
All right, you know what? I've come. This is not related to fantasy whatsoever. I have come to the conclusion that whenever the Steelers are favored big, they all bet heavily on not covering the spread in Vegas, and then they play terribly. Because I've never seen the Steelers, whenever they're favored by double digits, they play terribly.
Well, being a person who actually watched the Steelers game, let me just put some quick input in here to clear this up. They had so many offensive line injuries, and their offensive line was just out of sync that they could not run anybody. I don't care if they had Adrian Peterson or Walter Payton in there. They could not have gained any more yards. Their offensive line was just bad.
Well, Mendenhall said that even the running plays looked different than what they practiced. So that's something that might be on the offensive.
Well, it's a lot easier to run against the practice squad than an NFL defense.
Hall of Famer Barry Sanders did not have a line in all of his years in Detroit.
That's not even a comparison, though. Let's step back and think about what you just said. That's Barry Sanders, man. He doesn't need anyone. If Barry Sanders could snap the ball to himself and then run up the hole, he would get 10 yards every play just because.
Well, plus the Steelers actually traded a lot of their backup linemen for the Florida Marlins coaching staff this year. So.
The Miami Marlins, sir. Miami Marlins.
No, it was the Florida Marlins coaching staff. They went retro.
Oh yeah, the throwback week. Is it pick time? Yeah, it's pick time. I think it is. A little bit off topic. Back to college football. Number 14, Texas A&M, and number 18, Arkansas. Battle of Big 12 and SEC. Who wins?
I think it's going to be Texas A&M. I just don't think that Arkansas has the offensive productivity that they had last year with Ryan Mallett, and Texas A&M returned all but one starter from last year's team, and that was Von Miller. And their defense is pretty tough.
I'm going to remain consistent with my other picks and say that Arkansas is going to win simply because they're in the SEC and it's the dominant conference.
Superior.
I'm going to go with A&M. I think this is a bounce-back game for them. They were ranked number 8, and they lost a pretty good game. So I think this is a bounce-back game.
When you think about it, it's being played at a neutral site, which I thought was strange. But I'm going to go with A&M in this one. It's funny that we all established that the Big 12 is a vastly inferior conference to the SEC, yet Steve is the only one adhering to that thought process. Whatever. I'm sure it'll pay off for him eventually. Next pick
this week.
Yeah, right now. It's going to happen. Number 13, Clemson is taking on Virginia Tech. This game is being played in Virginia.
This is an interesting matchup because Virginia Tech went undefeated in conference to win that after they got torched in their first 2 games. However, that being said, I think Clemson rides the wave of momentum that they have, and I think they pull this one out and win.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like Virginia Tech is a little bit overrated, even last year when they ended up winning, because, I mean, they're in the ACC, which is sort of soft. But
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, they're not really that good. I just feel like they have this sort of inflationary factor where for some reason in the polls they get, a little bit overranked. So I'm going to say that Clemson's going to knock them down.
I think Clemson wins it too. Andre Ellington is a great running back. He's probably the best not talked about running back in NCAA football. And I think he just goes off against Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. Clemson, I think, wins this game, and hopefully, Virginia Tech is finally put down. I've seen so many times that they've been upset, and then somehow come back and do their thing.
Clemson ended Auburn's streak.
There you go. Although this is not quite the same Auburn team, but we'll take it.
It's an SEC team.
We'll take it. Number 3, Alabama is taking on number 17, Florida. Florida begins its stretch of insane schedule. Do you think the Gators have a chance here?
Well, this is a more difficult pick for me since they're both in the SEC, but I'm going to say I think Alabama's going to pull it out. They're good. They're I've just seen more from them. I mean, feel like Florida in the even the last couple of years just has not been up to typical Florida Florida par. I think Alabama's been playing much better football, so I think Alabama's going to get it.
I think Alabama wins this, and Will Muschamp blows some sort of gasket in his heart, going insane on the sidelines.
That's a solid prediction. Yeah. What's the over-under on that, do you think?
I'll agree with Vince on Will Muschamp blowing a gasket, but I think that Florida can actually pull this upset. Their offense has been very explosive this year with Rainey and Demps back there in the backfield. Brantley is starting to play like the quarterback that he was expected to be at, taking over for Tebow last year, and he's actually getting more familiar with Charlie Weiss's system, which is a pro-style offense, which is what he was used to. I think Florida pulls the upset.
I'm sick of trying to pick big upsets and failing miserably, so give me Bama in this one so we can actually get one on the board for teams getting an upset. Number 8, Nebraska is traveling to Wisconsin. First big Big Ten game for the Cornhuskers. How do they fare?
I think Nebraska wins it. I don't think Wisconsin will be able to stop Taylor Martinez. This guy has just been running completely jagged ever since he came into college football last year. He just runs through defenses.
Despite getting beat by TCU in the bowl game last year, I think Wisconsin has just a strong offensive line, a good running attack. I think they're going to be able to run all over Nebraska, and especially the fact they're at home. Camp Randall is a very intimidating stadium. We saw how Ohio State, could not deal with that last year. So I think Wisconsin is going to roll over Nebraska.
I have come to dislike the state of Wisconsin, except for the Green Bay Packers. But
interesting aside.
You're just full of hate tonight. You already called out Mike Vick.
I know. I'm just angry tonight, I guess.
He's grown angry in his old age.
He's sitting in my chair.
Yes, maybe. But I think really, having that being said, I just think it's Wisconsin pulls this one out barely, which makes me angrier because you beat a Youngstown person, which is another Ohio thing, and that makes me angry. Wisconsin beating Ohio in these last few years is just it's frustrating.
You know what? Before I even make a pick, can I just say kudos, Big Ten. You picked the perfect team for Nebraska to play. That's a great matchup, Nebraska and Wisconsin. I'll go with the Huskers though, because I really see Nebraska kind of going up and down through the conference. Loser Bowl in the NFL, guys. Who wins this week? Kansas City or Minnesota? Games being played in KC.
I'll go with your beloved Vikings. Just Kansas City giving up way too many points, and they just can't score any points. I think that Minnesota has a nice balance of scoring and giving up points.
I think based on pure parity in the NFL, I don't think that Kansas City is going to give up another big loss. I think they're going to turn around and beat your beloved Vikings.
You know what? As long as the Vikings give the ball to Adrian Peterson in the second half of the game,
what a concept, right?
I mean, 7 carries. Come on, that does not help my fantasy team. Step it up, Vikings. Come on. I say the Vikings win this, but really the winner is Kansas City. They are one step closer to Andrew Luck.
There you go. That's the real storyline here. This is not even me. I feel as a duty as a Vikings fan to pick the Vikings. This is literally, if the Vikings lose this game, I'm packing it in, boys. Call it a season. Don't even show up the rest of the time.
Do we find Jesse in odds on? Do we find Jesse in the radio station drinking out of a bottle of Jack Daniels, crying softly miserably that they didn't start Ponder?
If they lose this game, I begin the slow separation process from the Vikings, an inevitable downturn until they move to LA.
What if they end What if the game ends in a tie?
You know what? I'll take that. I would accept that. Whatever. It's not a loss.
You wouldn't go defeated.
This is true. Quickly, guys, 2 more NFL games. New England at Oakland, Jets at Ravens.
Patriots, they rebound quite nicely, and I think Baltimore takes it into the Jets.
Yeah, I think the Ravens look amazing this year. I'm going to say Ravens over the Jets, and the Patriots rebound and knock off Oakland.
I'm going to say Oakland wins this one. I say they're too physical for the Patriots, and they harass Tom Brady and somehow hurt him. And I'm going to go with the Jets over the Ravens. The Ravens, as good as they are one week, they are up and down. They're down on the next week. I think the Jets win.
I'm going with the two home teams here just because I really do like Oakland, and I think they got a shot here. I'll take them trying to pound the ball against New England, and I'll also take the Ravens at home in Maryland, taking on that Jets team that's been kind of a disappointment so far this year.
If Oakland wins, it's like rubbing salt in the wound of Boston Red Sox fans.
So think about it this way. You lose to the Bills and the Raiders in back-to-back weeks. That's
harsh. And your team blew a 9-game lead.
Yeah, there you go. Take that, Boston. Guys, final round bonus. Over-under on Romo finishing Sunday's game against Detroit unless he has to get pulled out due to injury.
Come on, Ndamukong Suh, knock him out, take out the guy I hate most in the NFL.
I don't see him finishing the game. I think Ndamukong Suh is going to get a lick on him, and he's going to be out.
I think he finishes the game. He comes back, maybe missing an arm, but he'll come back and play just because he's Tony Romo. He's going to shoot me up, man. I'm missing some stuff. Just put me in.
Give me the cortisone shot. I'm good. I think he'll finish this game somehow. I don't know if it'll be pretty or if Dallas will even come close to winning this game. But for some reason, this man just refuses to die, and eventually that's going to become a bad thing for Dallas. But for now, I'll take it as a sign of being a good player for Tony Romo. Maybe it's the starter. He's the only player sponsored by starter, and he seems to be the only guy that can't be injured.
I think he's angry, too, that he broke his collarbone last year and missed the season. I think he feels blame for that, so he's finding any way to go, here, put me in.
Makes sense. That'll do it for us this week. We hope you enjoyed us. We'll, of course, be back next Thursday for Raiders Zone Weekly yet again. Don't forget, Friday Night Football, a high school game, is going to be Alliance and Louisville here at Mount Union Stadium, and then, of course, Mount Union taking on Ohio Northern, that game being played in Ada, Ohio. Unfortunately, will not be making the trip, but I'm leaving it in the capable hands of Billy, Vince, and Steve. I'm sure they'll get the job done. Maybe we won't be on top of the press box this year.
I really hope not.
We'll see. Thanks for joining us, though. Keep listening to WRMU 91.1. This is the radio voice of Mount Union.